The very first mission that we have is Spadex. Spadex is very simple. Space docking experiment. Space docking experiment. If I talk about space docking experiment, first I would like to show you and discuss with you basic details. Then I'll discuss with you the basic of what is docking. Then, because in the exam they ask you specifically what were the objectives, I'll discuss with you what are the objectives of this mission. After mission, I'll then come to spacecraft, right? What is the detail, what kind of payload we are using, as we have just discussed. Is that fine? Then after the spacecraft, for your civil services mains, I would like to also add what they ask in the examination. What is the importance? This is the most important, which is very simple. I find the basic details more interesting than the importance. This is very simple. You would be able to write it. They ask you straight questions on importance. And then what I am interested more is importance application. What I am more interested here is my favorite part. This is other payload. So I'm not saying that docking is not important, but other payload is what is catching my attention, where we'll study poems. As Yashwardhan, you will now understand what is the meaning of this poems program. What is the meaning of this poems program? Basic details, quick facts. Whenever I discuss with you, I would need to discuss with you what is the launch vehicle. So the launch vehicle is known to me. It is PSLV. Just to also discuss, PSLV is having 4 stages. It is solid, liquid, solid, liquid. Yes or no? Any doubts till now? Which PSLV mission? I call it PSLV. It is PSLV, which one? Write down PSLV 60th. Just to know, PSLV 60th. Launched when? This was launched in December 2024. Launched and then finally successful docking. This took place. The date is not important, but just to start the first important mission of the year, I'd like to remember it. It was near Sankranti, so I know it is 4 plus 2. 16 January 2025, a very important date, so I will not forget it. That is my point. 16 January launched, and with successful docking, India became, for your prelims, India became, very good, the 4th nation. The 4th nation. 4th nation basically after US, then Russia. We'll just look at the details, then China. US, Russia, and thereby we have China. So basically, to broadly tell you, this space docking involved 3 steps. I'll discuss it in the next part, but still to just write in the intro. It is rendezvous. What is rendezvous? Meeting. Rendezvous with Simi Grewal was a very important show. Just like, how do I tell you? Just like Oprah, Indian Desi version of Oprah. was but very popular. Just like Coffee with Karan. Coffee with Karan's 10,000 times decent version was Rendezvous with Simi Grewal. The actress was the actress in Mera Naam Joker. And Mera Naam Joker is a movie. It was produced by RK Films. And RK Films was owned by Prithviraj Kapoor. His son Raj Kapoor was the actor in that movie. Very important with respect to the fact that how movies played a very important role in propelling cultural diplomacy, soft power in the USSR, which included the entire Central Asian countries. When we talk about India's Central Asian policy, SCO, we always say that soft power plays a very important role. Is it fine? Right? So we had seen first step is rendezvous, then just to also inform, get familiar, docking. Then we will have power transfer. I'll tell you what it means. And then we have undocking, broadly undocking, where each satellite performs separate function. Is it fine? Also, just to also write that as we compare the docking experiment with other nations, just like the Mars orbiter mission, which was cheaper than the movie, which is called as Martian. मार्शियन मूवी का पैसा का जो बजट था पिक्चर बनाने का, वो हमारे ऑर्बिटर मिशन से ज्यादा था. तो खुशी की बात हमारे लिए भी है और खुशी की बात उनके लिए भी है कि जब वो पिक्चर बनाते हैं तो कितना दिमाग लगा के बनाते हैं. ये नहीं कि ये सीक्वेंस ये वो जैसा भारत में होता है हाई बजट, उनकी हाई बजट मूवी अलग होती हैं बिल्कुल. तो ये कंपैरेटिवली इफ आई कंपेयर, द कीवर्ड इज इट इज कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव. एग्जांपल इज जस्ट लाइक the Mars orbiter mission. Year was Mars orbiter mission 2013 and launched by PSLV. ठीक है, launched by PSLV. Right. Second is now to understand docking process, and the mission concept. The docking process and mission concept. First is, if I discuss docking, if I just define what is the meaning of docking, basically what is a process, by which I'll use the term spacecrafts or satellites. Two spacecrafts or satellites are brought close to each other, in the same orbit, manually or autonomously, and made to join each other. Made to join each other. Made to join each other. And made to join each other and function as one unit. And function as one unit. And function as one unit. Just to broadly and simply discuss the idea that at the end of the day, you are carrying out experiments in the space. Whether you want to have a space station of your own, or you want to have a crewed module program just like Gaganyaan or International Space Station, or you want to have a mission like Chandrayaan-4 that we'll just discuss, that will collect the samples from the moon, because you need to carry the payload to the orbit in the space, and as we have just discussed, the biggest weight is of the propellant itself rather than payload. So if you need to carry a heavier payload, you cannot carry it at once. What you can do is you can carry one part of the entire module. Second part can be carried by a separate launch, and in the end, with the help of successful demonstration of docking, those two satellites can be made to work together. So when I say docking, if I just show you, starts from, let's say, the ground. If I just want to show you docking as the entire procedure, it starts from the ground. I used which launch vehicle? I am using PSLV. PSLV has got how many stages? 4. So I can just draw a PSLV. Quickly, just to show you the entire idea. This is the nozzle. This is where you have the payload. This is where you have the payload. Then you've got the navigation, guidance and control system. Then you've got the 4 stages: solid, liquid, solid, liquid. It is launched up in the space, and finally, when the payload is released in the orbit, this payload that is released in the orbit, that is 2 of the spacecrafts that we just will find out the names of, they were launched with relative velocity. मतलब एक सैटेलाइट या स्पेसक्राफ्ट को हमने लॉन्च किया, उसके कुछ देर बाद हमने दूसरी सैटेलाइट को लॉन्च किया. Just to know, these 2 satellites, they are called as Chaser and Target. The one that was launched earlier, that is called as Target. The one that was launched later is called as Chaser. The official names is SDX-01, SDX-02. So if I just want to highlight here, when this was launched, we have this particular satellite, for example. This was launched earlier. This is called as your Target. After Target, I had launched in the orbit the next satellite, which is called as, it is called as Chaser. So this launch was made with a relative velocity. There was difference in speed. It's like both of us are running in the same direction. You run, let's say 10 seconds before me. You have that edge. You have that head start. So when this particular satellite, let's say this is your chaser and this is your, let's say, target. When this was launched, this was the gap, right? And this gap was because of what? This gap was because of relative velocity. Then slowly we started the range of getting them closer. This is called as rendezvous. Rendezvous basically means what? Rendezvous basically means what? Meeting. In the technology of space, we'll say getting spacecraft closer to each other. So this rendezvous started with first far rendezvous. We started this meeting of each of these two. It is called as far rendezvous. This started from a distance of 20 kilometers and then slowly, now pay attention, slowly this distance was reduced. So this satellite 1, chaser, this satellite 2, target was moving ahead, chaser was behind. We got it to 20 kilometers. The rendezvous now started and it was finally brought in closer to each other. Closer to each other in such a way that this distance got reduced. Got reduced what? Got reduced from 20 kilometer to 3 meter. Amount of sensors, amount of telemetry was going on. So we finally got it to 3 meters. From far rendezvous that started at 20 kilometers, we reduced it to 3 meters. And then finally, we had which chaser or target? Chaser. We had chaser docking with target. We had chaser docking with target. Chaser docking with target. Docking successful. And then after docking got successful on 16th January, now they will function as one spacecraft. They will be one now. And this chaser and target, which is now one, they'd be power transfer. They'd be power transfer. They will all be working as one unit. And then finally, what will happen? They will undock. They will undock. And now what will happen? At the stage of undocking, they will do what? They will separate out. Undocking, or in other words, separation of the two spacecrafts. Separation of the two spacecrafts. So it was launching with relative velocity. That was the first step. After launch with relative velocity, we had to achieve rendezvous. We started with far rendezvous, slowly reduced distance to 3 meters. We had to actually plan it on the 7th or the 9th of January, but this stage could not be achieved, and thereby we had actually delayed this program, and because of this delay, finally the docking took place on 16th of January. It is functioning as one spacecraft. We will have power transfer experimented by ISRO, and then we will go for undocking. Depends on the mission. This is how this satellite looks like. Though I have drawn the solar panels horizontally. So this is what, these are flaps, they close, and they are solar panels for generation. Remember, we had seen the solar panel system, energy system required to run the sensors. You require energy. So there's no AC or DC in space. You have to utilize these solar panels. This is a ring. So basically a ring extends from the chaser, attaches with the, for example, if I am a chaser and there's a target, I will not, उसको मैं गले नहीं लगा लूंगा अपने से, पहले बोलूंगा आओ, उंगलियों से I'll develop that contact, and once that ring get attached, then I'll hug that person. That is how this particular docking took place. Is it fine? Finally, 16. So this is how it is, almost on the verge of meeting. They are just meeting with fingers. Is it fine? Very interesting experiment. Is it clear, all of you? Do you understand my point? Do you get a feel or not? चलिए आगे अब. तो अब ये इसका मिशन है, ये डॉकिंग था. अब जरा हम इसमें थोड़ी इंफॉर्मेशन और ऐड करते हैं. समझ में आया आपको? नाउ लेट्स राइट डाउन इन दैट सेम डिस्कशन, लेट्स राइट डाउन द इंटरनेशनल एग्जांपल्स. Now pay attention. I was discussing what? Pay attention, all of you. Structure is very important. What is docking? I would like to also discuss here some international examples I've shown you. Then we look at the objective, spacecraft, and then the importance. Is it clear? Once you understood this, then the only important part is your poems in this mission. So you write down international examples. First country in the world was US. Very good. US was the first country in the world to basically perform this docking, and this was performed, just to also inform you, in 1966. It was performed in 1966. And this mission is called as, Gemini 8, where it docked with target. Gemini was the chaser, target was Aegina. Just know the name. Target was the Aegina, and this was actually very important. A very interesting person was manually in that spacecraft Gemini. He was maneuvering the entire vessel to dock with Aegina. Who is this person? कौन हो सकते हैं व्यक्ति, अगर आपसे किसी क्विज कंपटीशन में पूछा जाए और वो 15 मार्कर हो? बिल्कुल सही. बहुत जिंदगी में गैस बहुत जरूरी है, सिविल सर्विसेज में भी. इन व्यक्ति का नाम था नील आर्मस्ट्रॉन्ग. ये पहले से ही was very तेज, because in 1969 finally he became the first man 3 years after this, after performing docking that we are performing now, when he pulled his Gemini 8 and he attached with this mission Aegina. 3 years after this, 69, he became the first person to perform single step for single step on moon, but a giant leap for mankind. ये याद रखिए कोट्स. वैसे तो अगर कोट्स नहीं भी याद रखे मार्क्स आते हैं ऐसे में, ऐसा नहीं कि कोट्स ही कोट्स याद करने हैं, हम असली याद करने वाला भूल गए. तो यूएसए के बाद राइट डाउन, यूएसए के बाद दे डिड इन 66. लुक एट द टेक्नोलॉजी. 58 में नासा मेड 57 स्पुतनिक फर्स्ट मिशन ऑफ रशियंस. स्पेस वॉर स्टार्टेड. 58 में नासा इन 6 साल में मैनुअल डॉकिंग. रिमेंबर, डॉकिंग कुड बी मैनुअल or it could be automatic. USSR, you write down, they basically did एक साल के बाद ही 1967. They basically what? They docked Cosmos 186, which was in this case Chaser. They docked with, very good online students. They docked with Cosmos, just for your information, 188. This became the target. And then China is the one that we need to follow. China is really a recent one. They would dock what with what? Very good. Quite logical. In 2011, what China did was they had launched an aircraft, Shenzhou 8. And this gives me an idea how it is required for my country also. They had launched Shenzhou 8, and this Shenzhou 8 docked with Tiangong 1, which is what? Which is what? क्या है Tiangong? स्पेस स्टेशन. और एक साल पहले, in fact, USA is interesting is we'd like to know that how they started with crude first, because normally you would go for uncrewed and then crude, right? In 2012, just to also inform you, अगली सीरीज एक साल के बाद ही Shenzhou 9 was launched and it docked with Tiangong 1. तो अगर आपको स्पेस स्टेशन स्पेस में चाहिए, इतना बड़ा स्पेस स्टेशन है, ISS इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन, आई टोल्ड यू 6 बेडरूम का एक घर है विद अ जिम. So you need to launch module by module. It is a prerequisite importance you already know for having a Bharatiya Antariksh space station that we'll have by 2035, just to give an idea. And this was a crewed mission. आदमी थे. क्रूड मतलब नहीं, क्रूड मतलब ये नहीं कि खींच खींच के थोड़ा राइट ले थोड़ा लेफ्ट ले, आगे आगे आ गया. क्रूड मतलब मतलब उसके अंदर व्यक्ति थे. देवर, इट वाज अ मिशन दैट वाज विद पीपल. फॉर एग्जांपल, व्हेन इन इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन वी आर लॉन्चिंग द साइंटिस्ट, where we had recently launched Sunita Williams and that male astronaut. He was in that Boeing capsule. That capsule docked with the International Space Station, and then she entered the space station, and then it separated. So, automatic through sensor. Manual तब होता है जब आपके पास वो पहले होता था. Manual was happening when there was no technology that was required, where the entire control was like a joystick in your hand. Is it fine? Now, mission objectives. Third part. What were the mission objectives? What were the mission objectives? You can write down. क्या objective था? Number 1, demonstrate technology. I told you in the language of ISRO we call it TD. Do you see now how it is all connecting? Had I not told you these things, you would have not understood this point. Now it will all be seamless to you. Technology demonstration for rendezvous and docking using two small spacecraft. Then second point you can write down. Write down demonstrating controllability. Demonstrating controllability in the docked condition. Controllability in docked condition. Then you can write down demonstrating the potential to extend the life of target spacecraft. And then finally demonstrate power transfer. Is it fine? Mission objectives. So broadly, you can just say, to remember it very easily, I can say that first mission was, objective was rendezvous, to keep it simplified. Second was docking, then extending the life as one aircraft, means you make it function as one aircraft. And then fourth is power transfer. Right now, Sarvan, the question that you asked me, it's just like an aeroplane. Initially in 70s and 80s, when we did not have the use of computer, the entire maneuvering in air was done by the pilots. But now when we have autopilot, the takeoff is done by the particular pilot. Once it is in the air, it automatically is managing its trajectory. But once it lands, then it automatically is done by the pilot himself or herself. So that mid-air was basically manual in 66. Now it is all electronic. There might be a case where there might be some error or some manual thing would be there. But broadly, what we need to understand is it can be by both the processes. Now it is all done by sensors controlled by telemetry on ground. हाँ, हो सकता है. हाँ, अब programmed होगा, but I'm still saying, follow the example of an airplane. If there's a lot of turbulence in the aeroplane, then the autopilot is automatically working. But sometimes the pilot might want to take the step and do some changes, though it is automatic. Something like that is also operating there in the case of docking. Is it fine? Should I go ahead now? I hope I'm able to clarify. Right. So now you write down the fourth part is what? Spacecraft details. Spacecraft details. Basically, you had chaser and target. Chaser is the one that is behind. Target is the one that is ahead. Chaser is, chaser का नाम क्या रखें? SDX-01. इसरो ने नाम रखा है SDX-02. दोनों का वजन ताकि आराम से हो सके 220 किलो. किस किस्म के स्पेसक्राफ्ट हैं? Classification of satellites, small satellites, and both of them, they are androgynous. Anthropology, what is androgynous? I think my understanding of anthropology is not anthropology which I think. I have not read the subject except Evolution of Man, which I prepared when I was preparing geology. What is androgynous? Androgynous basically means it is taken from gender and sex only, but androgynous means that there is no fixed rule. Any of the two can become a chaser or a target. ऐसा नहीं है कि SDX02 will only be target. It could become a chaser also. Right? The orbit was circular orbit. It is 470 kilometers. 470 kilometers is what orbit? Yes, Leo. Remember the part of the satellites. क्या क्या होगा इसमें? सोलर पैनल प्लस बताइए क्या होगा? एटीट्यूड कंट्रोल सिस्टम. Attitude and orbit. Attitude and orbit control system. It would contain different types of sensors. It would contain different type of sensors. What type of sensors? It would have a star sensor. It would have a sun sensor. It would have then what? Magnetometer. And I gave you a term, starts from A. It would have A, बताइए. No, वो तो फोन में होता है, एक्सेलरोमीटर. रोबोट के हाथ को क्या बोलते हैं? आर्म्स तो इंसान को बोलते हैं, इंसान की बाजुओं को. एक्चुएटर. यस, वेरी गुड. भूल जाते हो आप सारा, निशांत. Actuator. Robot, you must have seen work. No, actuator is a very common term that we use. Movable robot. Robot basically will technically the arm of robot will be called as an actuator. Is it fine? Very good. Right. Now to also discuss what is the importance. Importance is number one, write down in space docking. In space docking is a prerequisite. Is a prerequisite for common mission objectives. Common mission objectives where multiple rocket launches are required. Multiple rocket launches are required. For example, ISS is requiring all the time astronauts and cosmonauts visiting it, so it would need to dock, right? Then all of these missions, whether by SpaceX or by Soyuz, they will all be fulfilling the objective of ensuring that the astronauts, they can reach the space station. Is that fine? But all of them cannot be carried together, so you require in space docking as a prerequisite and technology demonstration under Spadex successfully highlights. Successfully highlights. Second, latest sensors were demonstrated. You cannot ensure that all of this docking takes place like this. So you require the latest sensors. Can you name me some of them? Look at these names. Very easy to remember. Rendezvous sensor. Proximity and docking. Proximity and docking sensor. Proximity and docking sensor. Proximity and docking sensor. Then processors for determining relative position and speed of aircraft. Right. Third, essential for the following future missions. Essential for the following future missions. Which mission? First is Bhartiya Antariksh Station by 2035. Starting from 2028 requires docking of how many modules? 5. Docking of 5 modules. Second, for Chandrayaan 4. Chandrayaan 4. Very good, Rahul Sharma. Chandrayaan 4 will be what? Sample return mission. Right? Chandrayaan 4 is containing how many missions? How many modules? Yes, it will contain 5 modules. I'll just discuss it with you in a bit. 5 modules where it will be launched in 2 missions. In one mission, we'll have 4. In other mission, we'll have 1. It is also essential for Gaganyaan. Gaganyaan में कैसे होगा? How will we use docking in Gaganyaan? We have sent the crewed vessel in the space. How will you have Gaganyaan's application? I would like to know. Very good. And what if the crew module is stuck in space? Something like what happened to International Space Station, you never know. Is it clear? There is some problem in the crew vessel in space, it gets stuck. So in this case, you would require in Gaganyaan for what? For evacuation of crew. Evacuation of crew. Right. It is essential for these missions. Then 4. It will provide opportunity for international collaboration as countries which are yet to demonstrate and other nations like US, Russia can collaborate for joint missions. Which will help in what? Akhil, which will help in what? Which will help in space diplomacy and very good, forex earning. In bracket, India has limited share in space market. So you are trying to look at a scenario where your space policy is saying that despite so many launches that you've had, you have just got up. 2020, we have just opened up the space. 2023, we have a policy that is encouraging involvement of private players. So in this case, forex earning along with space diplomacy, along with close cooperation, will be automatically getting promoted. Isn't it? What else? Tell me, this is so simple. Is it number 5 or number 4? Number 5. Tell me, Megha, tell me. What else do you think will be the objective? बताइए अब 5वां क्या है? इतना सोचना क्या है? तो आसान है, इसमें तो पॉइंट धड़ाधड़ निकलने चाहिए, जितना मर्जी बोलो तैयार है वो. इट्स फेड इन द ब्रेन. आपको कीवर्ड सारे बता दिए मैंने, अब आपको वही लिखने हैं. स्पेस का मतलब क्या है? प्राइवेट सेक्टर एंड, अरे भाई प्राइवेट सेक्टर को एनकरेजमेंट नहीं मिलेगी. डॉकिंग, प्राइवेट सेक्टर एनकरेजमेंट, प्राइवेट सेक्टर स्काई रूट. Then we have discussed the case of Agnikul. They are working so much for space. Will you not agree with me? So, tell me, Piyush, it will foster innovation and private sector involvement. Private sector involvement. How? As ISRO, as per Space Policy 2023, is promoting knowledge sharing and technology sharing with private sector, which will promote synergy. And thereby promote space startups having significantly having significant potential. What else? सबसे जरूरी बताओ अखिल. हाँ, कॉलेजेस में, करंट अफेयर्स में, साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी अंडरस्टैंडिंग इंप्रूव होगी, फंडामेंटल ड्यूटी, साइंटिफिक टेम्पर प्रमोट होगा. ये बहुत जरूरी है. मैंने आपको स्ट्रैंड स्टार्टिंग में बताए थे. आई एम गिविंग नो. What is the scope of space? How is the scope of space changing? Or tell me here. बताइए. देखिए, मैंने आपको 3 बातें बताई थी इसरो की चेंजिंग नीड्स की. First, I had told you that it is changing from demand side to supply side to demand side. Then I told you it is involving the private sector. It is all privatized now. I gave the example repeatedly. Gave the example of NGLV. I separately wrote with a separate pen, though it is very easy for me to use a separate pen. Nothing great. But third is something which is very great. बताइए ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स, बताइए. बताइए छठा. ISRO's focus is changing from what to what? Satellite. Go beyond satellite. छोड़ दी सैटेलाइट तो मैं और आप भी लॉन्च कर लेंगे. अब बड़ी बातों का समय आ गया है. छोड़ो कल की बातें, कल की बात पुरानी. Yes. Strengthen the resolve of ISRO to move from, बताइए, टेल मी, बताओ. प्रतीक बताओ, बताइए. केडी बताओ. We are moving from satellite based missions to, बताइए, satellite based missions to what? Interplanetary missions. I told you, you have to write it. टफ क्वेश्चंस पूछेगा तभी तो आपको 3-4 नंबर लेंगे एक्स्ट्रा. नहीं तो वो सब everybody is reading that point. फिर what is the point of coming to me? वही कट कॉपी हिंदू एक्सप्रेस एंटर दबा दबा के पॉइंट बना के खटाखट मैगजीनें दे दी जाएंगी आपको. वो समझ में भी आएगा, आ जाए तो बहुत अच्छी बात है. Write down, conclude this point, because I am giving conclusion. They'll ask you a straight question here. Straight question on application in space S&T. Straight questions come, no ifs and buts. Easiest area I told you in my class when I had taken quantum. Is it fine? Write down. Therefore, Spadex is a testament. Spadex is a testament to India's stride. To India's stride. India's stride in indigenous innovation. Indigenous innovation. Indigenous innovation and solidifying India's resolve to be on the global space map. Is it clear? Anything else that you want to add? I think today only Hindu wrote the editorial in this thing. Hindu. It came today or yesterday? I think Express wrote Hindu आज ही छापा होगा हिंदू ने इसके ऊपर आर्टिकल. कल छापा था, आज नहीं है, फिर कल छाप दिया होगा, या नोट्स पढ़ के मंडे को छापेंगे. संडे को एडिटोरियल नहीं आता, उनको भी तो पढ़ना पड़ता है, जर्नलिस्ट है. Is it fine? Is it fine, all of you? Is it fine, all of you? Now with this is the story of Spadex. That is what we all, it got the attention of PSLV 60th, but that is not what we are interested in. We would like to now focus on my other payload. Very good. Other payload which I am interested in is poems. Now you give this heading. Now you give this heading. Give this heading, write down. Poem. Poem. The last part is the most interesting part. Poem. Now, poem is very important. You write down, it is, what is the last stage of PSLV called?
PS4.
PS4. Very good. I told you, remember, from PlayStation. PS. How do I define poem? I have told you what is. Yes, platform for experimenting, where the last stage of PSLV, which stage? Liquid stage is used. It is not dumped as a debris. It is used for performing experiments. And I told you that the number of satellites have increased from 8 in ExpoSat that was launched in January 2024. So define now poem. Very simple. Once you understand the terms, they become very easy. Poem is PS4, which is the last stage of PSLV. PS4, O for, what is O for? Orbital. E for experimental. M for module. PS4 experimental module, write down, implies usage of the fourth stage of PSLV, that is PS4, that is PS4 for performing in orbit microgravity experiments. In orbit microgravity experiments for a period of 3 months. For a period of 3 months. Which otherwise would have become, very good, space debris. Which otherwise would have become space debris. And you can write down these missions or experiments. These missions or experiments serve as a precursor, मतलब पहले, precursor for validation of proof of concept and enable technology for future missions. Write down, in terms of number of payloads, it is carrying 24. 24 such experimental satellites are being carried for experimentation in this POEM 4 module. Earlier we had launched 8, which is PS, that was launched in the previous orbital experiment. It is called as POEM 3. Indicating increasing prowess of ISRO. So you know what the interesting part here is, that had there been no POEM module, because we activate propulsion in the RAS stage, we provided power to stay more for a longer period in space, because otherwise it becomes a debris. So that extra 3 months is utilized to perform orbital experiments, because it's a very big thing. To conduct certain experiments in microgravity, you have to take it in that orbit. So you need to launch a separate vehicle. But in this case, you've launched a vehicle already. The last stage can be utilized as experimental module with some payloads. So it is also thereby reducing the costs and optimizing the launch. Optimizing the launch mission. Right, and under POEM, we will not discuss all the 24. The most important is crop. The most important here is crops. What is crops? You can write down: compact research module. Very good. Orbital plant studies. Compact research orbital plant studies, where we had successfully germinated cowpea. What is cowpea? Lobia. लोबिया। ब में बड़ी की मात्रा आती है, छोटी की लोबिया में। लोबिया, यू अंडरस्टैंड फ्रॉम लॉन्चन, ऑल ऑफ यू? छोटी। लगता है सब विदेश से पढ़ के आए हैं आप, ऑक्सफोर्ड या कैम्ब्रिज से। राइट। व्हाट इज दिस मॉड्यूल? क्रॉप्स मॉड्यूल। What is this module? It is nothing but a very small cylindrical airtight container. Cylindrical airtight container which is cylindrical. Cylindrical मतलब सिलिंड्रिकल, सिलिंड्रिकल मतलब सिलिंड्रिकल, उसमें क्या बताना है. So this is cylindrical. (45 centimeter). This is 15 centimeter. This has got soil, fertilizer, and here the crop lobia was grown in space. Airtight container. तो 15 सेंटीमीटर कितना होगा? 45-15 स्केल, इतना बड़ा, इतना बड़ा होगा ये. एग्जैक्टली 15 15 हाँ 50, यस एब्सोल्युटली. इससे बड़ा होगा. 15 सेंटीमीटर तो इतना है, 15 इतना बड़ा. इसके अंदर हमने कॉपीज उगाए थे. किसके अंदर? पोएम मॉड्यूल में. इन द फ्यूचर मिशंस वी विल इंक्रीज द टाइम पीरियड ऑफ the module, and this will basically help us in what? This will basically help us in addressing the addressal of food needs in space. Address food needs in space. ठीक है. Is it fine, all of you? Understood? Anything else?